All right, I apologize for that delay. We're going to go ahead and jump in. Thank you everybody for joining us today. During today's webinar, we're going to take a look at the Form 990 balance sheet breakdown. We'll deep dive into the process of completing the balance sheet on the 990 series form. My name is Nikita. I'll be your host today during the webinar. I've been with Tax 990 for about 3 years now. And I am currently the product manager of Tax 990, and I'm excited to present this webinar with you today. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. Please note this presentation will be recorded and available at tax990.com after the webinar. We will also send out an email with a recording of the webinar attached that you can use for your reference in the future. If you have questions during the presentation, please add them to the chat and we will address them at the end of the webinar. Please note we are not tax advisors or the IRS. We will not be giving specific tax advice and we're not able to advise on your specific organization status. All right, let's jump in here. So just a quick introduction. The balance sheet is the financial statement that provides a snapshot of an organization's financial health for the year. It shows what the organization owns, which are the assets, what it owes, which are the liabilities, and the difference between the two, known as equity or net assets. By analyzing a balance sheet, you can assess the stability and financial position of a business or nonprofit organization, like those reporting on the Form 990. During today's webinar, we'll look at understanding what the balance sheet is, understanding how to read the balance sheet, understanding how to make it balance, and we'll look at a Tax 990 demo of completing the 990 form balance sheet. What is the balance sheet? This is the financial report that summarizes organizations' assets and liabilities. The balance sheet shows what is owned and what is owed. It tells a story about how the organization operates financially during the year and shows growth, decrease, or sustainability. A few different terminology words we're going to talk about throughout this webinar. We're going to talk a lot about assets, which are what the organization owns. Liabilities are what the organization owes. Net assets are the leftover amount after subtracting total liabilities from total assets. Accounts receivable, which is money an organization is owed but not yet paid. Accounts payable, which is debt owed but not yet paid for. Amortization, which is paying off debt over time in equal installments. BOY, which stands for beginning of year, and EOY, which stands for end of year. How to read the balance sheet on the assets section. So assets on the 990 are reported on lines 1 through 15. These are what the organization owns or what is owed to it. They are divided into two categories. The current assets reported on lines 1 through 9, which are assets that can be converted to cash or used within a year. Examples could include cash, receivables, and short-term investments. And non-current assets from lines 10 through 15, which are long-term assets like buildings, equipment, or long-term investments that will be held for more than a year. Examples of assets could include the organization's cash on hand or in the bank, money owed to the organization, such as unpaid donations, land, building, and equipment, which would be the value of any property or equipment owned. Now we'll talk about liabilities. On lines 17 through 25, you'll report liabilities of what the organization owes to others, like assets, liabilities are divided into, like the assets, sorry, the liabilities are divided into two categories. You have your current liabilities reported on lines 17 through 19, which are obligations due within a year, like accounts payable or short-term loans, and non-current liabilities reported on lines 20 through 25, which are long-term liabilities such as mortgages or long-term debt. Examples of liabilities for accounts payable could be bills the organization still needs to pay, loans or mortgages, such as long-term debt the organization owes. Net assets or fund balances are reported on lines 27 through 33. These represent the organization's equity or its residual value after all liabilities have been subtracted from the assets. The net assets are categorized into unrestricted net assets, which are funds that the organization can use for any purpose. Temporarily restricted net assets, which are funds restricted by donors for a specific purpose or time period. Or permanently restricted net assets, endowments or funds that must be maintained indefinitely. Only the income generated by these can be used. The total of these lines, which would be reported on line 33, represents the net worth of the organization. So how does it all tie together? So you've reported your total assets on line 16, which is the sum of everything the organization owns. We've reported our total liabilities on line 26, which is the sum of everything the organization owes. And our net assets on line 33 is what is left after liabilities are subtracted from assets. This is the organization's equity. The balance sheet balances when the total assets equals the sum of liabilities or net assets. Assets equals liabilities plus net assets. So we'll jump into a quick demo at Tax 990. The balance sheet, of course, are essential for filing the 990 form. It will provide a clear picture of the financial year for your organization. We do have a knowledge base at tax990.com that will provide additional information to learn more about the 990 form, the balance sheet itself, or specific sections of the balance sheet. Or you can contact our support team for assistance, and we'll look further at that here in just a minute. Let me just get our demo pulled up here. Just one moment while we log into our demo account. All right, so I do have a couple of forms in this account, but we're going to go ahead and jump into our in-progress 990 form since we're specifically talking about the balance sheet on the form 990. Now, of course, each 990 series form is different in the way the balance sheet is calculated. We do have several other webinars coming up over this week to look at those other form balance sheets to review the intricacies of those. As I mentioned, we're going to jump straight down here to part 10. Now, I've already got this form pretty much completed just for the purpose of this webinar. So I've entered all of my information on pages 1 through 10. Since we're specifically talking about the balance sheet today, we're going to go ahead and jump to page 11, which is part 10 of the 990 form. Now we're going to enter our values for both the beginning of year and the end of the year. As I mentioned in the slideshow, the assets are listed here on lines 1 through 15, with the total assets being calculated on line 16. Now when filing with Tax 990, all of the information you provide in lines 1 through 15 are going to auto-calculate onto line 16 for you. And we do have a lot of little helpful clues throughout the filing process to help you complete that form and make sure everything balances appropriately. If we scroll down, we'll see our liabilities here on line 17 through 25, and our total liabilities listed here on line 26. And our net assets or fund balances listed on lines 27 through 33, with our total calculations being reported here on line 32 and 33. Now, another piece of the 990 form that has to be incorporated in is on page 12, part 11, for our reconciliation of net assets. So we'll take a look at that as well. Let's jump back to page 11 and enter our values. So if I'm putting in my total assets for the beginning of the year on the different line items in reference to my financial status, you'll see that that's going to calculate down here at the bottom. Now we're going to work on it beginning of year to end of year for each category. And just enter our values accordingly. And again, it's going to calculate automatically for us on line 16 for our total assets. Now these are only highlighted red because we have some calculation matches we have to meet further down the form here, and we'll look at those in just a couple of minutes. First, we're going to go down to our liabilities and complete our liability section. So again, same process. I'm going to add my information for each category here, and it will calculate my total liabilities at the bottom on line 26. Now I've got my total assets completed for beginning and end of year, and I've got my total liabilities completed for beginning and end of year. If you do have questions, we have little help notations along the way that'll provide you with a reference on that information. Now we're going to determine if our organization follows FASB or does not follow the FASB. Now, Tax 990 is not able to determine whether or not your organization follows or does not follow. That's something that you would have to reference your determination letter or speak to the IRS for guidance on. But an indication in one of these boxes is required. Once you make that indication, the necessary additional sections are going to generate. So as you can see, as I'm clicking back and forth here, because I've chosen that it does follow, these lines here have opened up. If I choose this option, these bottom lines here are going to open up. Now in these lines, we're going to be entering the difference between our assets and our liabilities. So we're going to take the difference between our $50,000 and $1,500, which is going to be $48,500, and then same on this side, the difference between our total assets and our total liabilities, and enter the difference value on one of these two lines, or both if applicable. But the total of these two lines needs to match the difference between assets over liabilities. So if I update this, I can separate those onto two lines as long as my difference still matches. I'm going to go ahead and change that back. All right, now we've cleared the error. So without that, let's see, I'll show you one more time. When we don't have these values appropriate, we have an error down here on the bottom. That's going to tell you that the amount entered on part 10, line 33 of column A which is 49,500, must agree with what's entered on Part 10, line 16, column A, which is 50,000. So we have to adjust our values accordingly. If we add that 500 back in, that's going to automatically be resolved because it meets that calculation requirement, where our line 33 total liabilities, net assets, fund balances matches our line 16. Now we have an error here on line 32, column B, and as I mentioned, that is in relation to part 11 on page 12. So we're going to jump over and look at part 11 on page 12. But again, it tells you the error here. Part 10, line 32B must equal part 11, line 10. So it's going to give you guidance throughout the entire process to help you resolve those errors. So that error is going to be in relation to part 11, line 10. So my value right now is sitting at 47,400, and it needs to be 64,400 to match my column B from the previous section. So how can I do that? I would need to add an increase to part 11. Now these fields you cannot make updates on. Those are going to be auto-calculated fields from other sections of the form. So we can use the yellow box fields down here or this add info button to make that adjustment and balance out that information. So we're going to say we have other changes in our net assets, and we're going to explain that on Schedule O for the purpose of this webinar. So we received additional donations. We're going to add our information, and we're going to add our value. It's going to save it there, and when you come back, it's balanced out to that 6,400. So if this number is higher, you can add a decrease here. If this line 10 number is too low, you can add an increase here to help those values balance. Now, just for the purpose of showing you the remainder of the form, we'll bounce back here, and you can see on part 10, all of those errors have been resolved. We don't have any red notifications anymore. On part 11, our errors have been resolved and we don't have any notifications. So, let me see. So if you're filing a 990 series return form or want to learn more about filing requirements, you can visit us at tax990.com. We do have several videos and blogs and help text on our website for the balance sheet specifically to help you complete those calculations, and of course the errors that we talked about today in that form to help provide you guidance on that. We do have experienced live support team here available by phone, email, and chat. We are here Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we can assist you through that process. Now, keep in mind, we cannot tell you specifically what information to put on the form. We cannot tell you how to calculate your values in direct numbers, but we can help explain what the errors mean and where you may need to make adjustments to help fix that. If you have questions, we'll take just a couple minutes here. If you want to go ahead and put those in the live chat. Again, we can't help you with determining what specifically to report because we can't provide, that's financial advice, which we're not allowed to provide because we're not financial advisors. However, we can assist with basic questions on the application with Tax 990, completing your form with Tax 990, or general information. So if you want to go ahead and put those in the chat, please do so, and we can address those. I'll give you just 1 minute. Ruth is wondering where to report your rent. So that's going to be in either line 17, 18, or 19 in your liabilities. Likely it would be line 17, but please consult a tax advisor on confirmation for that before moving forward. Lee, you would need to consult with a tax advisor to confirm if a shed is considered a building. Since it is a permanent structure, that would likely be a building, but please, again, confirm with a tax advisor on that before proceeding on specifically where to report that on your form. Now keep in mind, we don't have any questions coming in. Please send us an email. I know that we all think of a question after the fact, so please reach out to us if your questions do come up. Keep in mind the November 15th deadline is a really big deadline for a lot of organizations that either filed an extension back in May for a 6-month deadline extension, or that have a July through June tax year. The deadline is November 15th for both of those entities. Our support team will be available for extended hours as we near that November 15th deadline, but please take your time, get started now, and reach out to us if you have questions so that we can provide the most seamless support available and help you get those completed in a timely manner. Lee, if you, Lee is wondering where to find our videos that I had mentioned. If you go to tax990.com, without logging into your account directly, just tax990.com. If you scroll clear to the bottom of our homepage, you'll see our YouTube logo, and I'll actually post the link in here as well. And you can find all of those videos that we have available on our YouTube channel. Let me post this link. There we go. Lee just confirmed that you received that link for our YouTube channel. I did share it with everybody so you guys have access to that as well. And again, it's always on our tax990.com, YouTube /tax990. And you can search, there's a little a little icon so you can search for videos specifically. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and hop off here since questions have really settled in. So again, reach out to us if anything does come up. We're here to help you. Otherwise, good luck with filing your 990 series forms, and make sure you get those done on or before November 15th. And keep an eye out. We've got another really big webinar coming up next week just for the general process of filing with Tax 990. So keep an eye out for that webinar as well, and please join back. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.